Kerala. Happy Independence Day to everybody. I welcome all of you, part of the INTACH family, and those from outside who have logged in for this event. This is Chapters of a Shared History, an event that is hosted jointly by 13 chapters of INTACH. INTACH, as many of you know, and probably some of you don't, is the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. It is now an almost 40-year-old volunteer body. It is the premier volunteer body working on the cause of the conservation of India's diverse heritage. This is the 75th. Today marks the end of the 75th year of Indian independence. The reason we organize this event is because as the distance increases from that great movement that led to Indian independence, the actual events and the personalities and the ideas that animated that movement become less clear to a newer generation. As the people who were actually part of it, there are fewer and fewer of those people with us. There is an increasing importance for us to engage with those ideas in greater detail so that they don't become hazy. They become an abstraction, they lose meaning for us. The movement that led to Indian independence involved so many people doing so many remarkable things. Often when we look at official interpretations of official communication around independence, it's all too easy to think that it was just about a few events and a few individuals. It clearly wasn't. It was a very long movement. It had many layers. There were many people who had differing motivations. There were many ideas, some often at cross purposes. Many people did very remarkable things. They put their lives, their future, their fortune on the line for this very big dream. But as the distance increases, we sort of lose that granular detail of what was this huge thing, because we were not there, and it's difficult for us to understand how complex it was, how big it was. And it's a movement of a sort that that's no equal in the time we live in. And as INTACH, we felt that we should probably do it from our own way, as indeed many people are doing, to engage with those ideas. And the best way, and probably the most reliable way of doing that, is to engage with strands of that story at the local level. INTACH is a volunteer body that works across the country. We are 200 chapters. We are just over 200 chapters. We are comprised of a small number of people who are experts in various conservation disciplines, in history, and various scientific disciplines that feed into conservation, etc. But the substantial part of INTACH are citizens, are interested citizens who care for India, who care for its future, who deeply respect the legacies that are involved in being an Indian, to understand those legacies and be informed by that legacy in our journey forward. And so that is the reason we have sort of engaged in an event like this. It's a very quickly put together event. Some of us got together just 3 or 4 days back and sort of tossed the idea of an event. So through the next hour or so, or a little bit over an hour, you would probably run into a few rough edges here and there. I request everybody to indulge us because we're all volunteers, and we balance many lives. And so therefore, while we would like to do as nice an event, as satisfying an event, you might sense a few areas where probably things could have been done nice in a better way. There might be a slide where the photograph is not as good as it could have been, etc., etc. Please indulge us. This event was made possible by, as I mentioned, by 13 chapters of INTACH. but equally by two divisions of INTACH that supported this initiative. The first of those divisions is the Heritage Education Division of INTACH. It is officially called the HECS division, and its business is to work with young people and make young people aware and informed and inspired by the legacy of India. The other division is the Chapters Division of India. Both of these divisions have been supportive in making this event happen. All these colleagues of mine who you will see in a moment have put in time to do whatever quick research they could do to initiate an event like this. But the intent of the event is not necessarily to pull together an authoritative history of the freedom movement from our respective places. The intent is to start conversations, to engage with the ideas, to sort of to bring awareness of the fact that it was a truly national movement. It was not about Delhi, it was not about Bombay, Calcutta, etc. Every corner of the country had something happening. So hopefully that is one of the senses that you will get through the next few minutes, next hour or so. The other thing is that it will probably, as you listen to it, it may kindle thoughts. There may be ideas, there might be references, there might be a few things that you disagree with us as we present things. If you have such thoughts, etc., that is perfectly fine. That is indeed the reason we have this event. Please type them in the chat box. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit of time for a Q&A or a conversation at the end. But if some of us speaking actually makes you think of something even more interesting, this event would have been a success. Before I end, a few very small housekeeping rules. By now, I think, thanks to COVID, we're all like professionals at using Zoom. And yet I feel I'd like to repeat it. For the interest of for a good experience viewing, listening, etc., it would be good if everybody turns off their videos. From our part, we intend to sort of turn off everybody's videos, but Zoom keeps updating, and sometimes, you know, it sort of seems like it's way smarter than us. In which case, please take the role of a co-host, because this event is for us, and make it a meaningful one, a satisfying one for everybody else. Turn off your videos. Be vigilant of your corner of the event. Turn off your video, turn off your audio, so that everybody can listen to the speaker properly and without disturbance. And without further ado, I'd like to get into the presentations. The first of the presentations will be by my senior colleague from the Delhi chapter, Swapna Liddle. Swapna is going to talk about a remarkable event that happened following the defeat of the British in Delhi, but not the most recent time, not in 1947, but the previous instance when the British were defeated in Delhi. Something quite remarkable happened. Over to you, Swapna.
Thank you so much. And I wish everyone a very happy Independence Day. I am sharing today a story on behalf of the Delhi chapter, and it is connected to the Red Fort in Delhi, where, of course, as we all know, each year on Independence Day, the national flag is hoisted by the Prime Minister. The event I am relating, however, took place much earlier in 1857. And that year, large parts of the country rose up in revolt against British rule. Delhi became an important center of that uprising. Thousands of soldiers from different military stations converged on Delhi. Here, they were joined by people of the city, as well as peasants from the surrounding countryside. Though Delhi had seen many regime changes in the past, this was different. For the first time, the initiative for change was not taken by a conquering power, but by common people. They did, of course, induce the Mughal emperor to become the symbolic head of their movement, but the government they set up in the Red Fort was different from the usual monarchy. It was to be run by a court of administration, selected from among soldiers and citizens. Thus, they were in a way following democratic principles, which were rare in that day and age. It was also a regime that was aspiring to more egalitarian values. In keeping with this line of thinking, an order was issued that the emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was to be known henceforth not as Hazrat Jahapana Salamat, which meant your exalted majesty, but as Garib Parwar Salamat, protector of the poor. We must realize that these ideas of democracy and equity were quite new at that time, when the norm was absolute monarchy, when the norm was a hierarchical social order. This new government sent out appeals far and wide for their fellow countrymen to join them, irrespective of regional, sectarian, and ethnic backgrounds, to come together against British rule. In this way, in making a common cause against the British regime, they were also in the process of forging for themselves a national identity that was beyond religion, language, or region. They asked for the overthrow of a regime that they recognized as racist and economically exploitative, which levied crippling taxes. It dispossessed landowners and tillers. It reserved higher jobs in government only for those of their own race, and kept Indians in poorly paid jobs. There was also for the first time a recognition that British rule was exploitative at a national level. Unlike older governments, the British East India Company's government in India ruled on behalf of a power beyond the seas, and its policies were aimed at transferring the wealth of India as a whole to Britain. The revolt of 1857, of course, as we know, was suppressed by the British, who captured Delhi and the Red Fort a little over 4 months after the revolt had begun. Recognizing the symbolic importance of the fort, they demolished most of the buildings inside it and stationed their troops there instead. Guns were mounted on its ramparts, pointing towards the city. For many years, it remained a reminder of the failed revolt of 1857, which, however, despite the failure, was an important chapter in the story of the national movement and freedom struggle. The many stories of the revolt of 1857 became sources of inspiration for later freedom fighters, who would go on to secure India's freedom. The fledgling ideas seen in 1857 of a diverse nation based on ideals of democracy and social justice were the guiding principles of our later national leaders. So when the nation finally gained its freedom in 1947, in memory of the historic role played by the Red Fort as an early landmark of our national freedom struggle, the national flag was ceremonially hoisted on its ramparts on 16th of August. This became an Independence Day tradition that is followed to this day every year on the 15th of August, as the Prime Minister of India hoists the flag and addresses the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swapna. That was wonderful. So it's a tradition. Had no idea that that's the reason why. One always thought that it started with the Day of Independence and the raising of the flag, but it has an earlier history, and the very ideas that informed the movement sort of took inspiration from a much earlier history. So wonderful to know that. Thank you so much. As I said, if anybody has things to add on, enrich the conversation, please type it into the chat box. As you just heard, each of the modules would be around 4 to 5 minutes. They will be short stories, and inherently the time doesn't allow one to sort of present a very exhaustive history. So everything will be a story of this nature, a small vignette, and please add to it so that the conversation builds. And we have ambitions of this spawning of, little publications and so on and so forth. So once again, thank you so much, Swapna, and welcome to my colleague, Dr. Antara Mukherjee from the Hooghly chapter of INTACH. Hooghly is very special because it is linked with a powerful legacy that we think of when we think of freedom. It is one of the first sort of experiences that come to mind when we think of the freedom movement. It's a sort of fire that sort of lit up the freedom movement. Over to you, Antara.
So can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Both.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. Is my screen visible to everyone?
It is.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. So, good evening, everyone. I am speaking from Hooghly, and this is the place where one second, I cannot share. Why is it not happening?
We can see it, Antara. It's visible.
No, but I'm unable to change the screen.
Okay. Probably come out of full screen and redo it.
Yeah. Right. So now I think I can change my screen. Okay. So good evening, everyone. I'm speaking from Hooghly district in West Bengal, where our national song was composed some 146 years ago. The composer, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, was not only a Bengali poet, novelist, and an essayist, but he was also a civil servant who was posted as deputy magistrate of Hooghly in 1875. And it was during his tenure here that he wrote one of his famous novels, Andamans. It is in this novel that he wrote a 5-stanza song, Vande Mataram, the first 2 verses of which came to be adopted as our national song. The later verses had names of Hindu deities, so our leaders thought that it could hurt the sentiments of our non-Hindu friends, and so they refrained it from adopting the entire song. After Gurudev recited it for the very first time in 1896 at Beaton Square during Kolkata Congress or Calcutta Congress, the first 2 words became a national slogan. The song played a crucial role in concretizing and in strengthening the national identity of people who had been under foreign rule for a very, very long time. No wonder it was banned by the British government, and it was only after independence that the song could be adopted as our national song in 1950. Now, if one reads the first verse carefully, due to time constraint, I am concentrating only on the first verse, one would inevitably realize that the novelist was jotting down what he was seeing in front of his eyes. The words in red, the hurrying stream, orchard, winds of delight, moonlight dreams, blossoming trees, etc., surrounded him during his stay at a house in Joraghat, Chinsura, from the Hooghly district. This brings me to the house where the novelist stayed and composed our national song. The house is called Bankim Bhavan or Bande Mataram Bhavan, and it is one of the historic places in the district of Hooghly. It is located in Budeb Mukherjee Road, named after the eminent 19th century Bengali educationist Budeb Mukherjee, and it is part of the palace that originally belonged to the trader Qasim Male, who sold it to the Zamindar of Balasore, Padmalochan Mondal, and from him it was bought by the famous Addi family of Chinsura. Initially, it was one long property. Now you find the Bande Mataram Bhavan as a separate property. But that yellow arrow over there indicates an octagonal room where Mahatma Gandhi stayed for 2 days in 1936. As I entered through those green doors that you see over there, I could feel the bygone era vividly. I went up the stairs and I reached the terrace, and I could actually see what Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay saw. I could feel the leaves from those blossoming trees, the cool breeze from the overstretching Ganges over there. And then when I looked down, I saw the beautiful orchard. I climbed down the stairs and I entered through this gate, and I discovered the basement of the house, which is now being used as the exhibition space. Its rooms are still smacking off those eras, the time when Bankim Chandra perhaps loitered around the campus, thought and wrote what he saw around him. The windows overlooking the other side of the Ganges, that is Naihati, from where he actually belonged. He was born there, he crossed the river, and he came to Surat, to Hooghly, to stay for 5 years. The rooms are beautifully illustrated with pages of history. You have the old cravings on the walls. You have stories from the Indian chapters. And as I came out of the house, I saw the ghat, the steps to the ghat. I went down, I sat for some time, and I thought probably this is the place where he must have sat and thought of Sujalam, Sufalam, Malaya, Seetal. So when next time you come to Bengal, don't forget to come here and sit on the same historic places. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Antara. Did anybody else feel a slight sense of goosebumps when she went into that room where he must have sat and he must have written that, written those words that we have heard from our youngest days? So wonderful. Thank you so much, Antara.
Thank you. Thank you.
So from a powerful piece of music that sort of shaped the national movement, we go to another idea, a powerful idea that changed the way changed the way we looked at education, a powerful new vision about education, and it came from Mahatma Gandhi, and it came from Mahatma Gandhi, and that will be presented by my good friend architect Vyoma Seth, and she's part of the INTACH chapter in Rajkot in Gujarat. Vyoma, go for it.
Namaste everyone, wishing you all a very happy Independence Day. Is my screen visible?
Yes, visible.
Okay, just a second. Okay. Would you consider going to a college where you're not only taught your subject, but also get to cook and eat together, read in a library that is in the middle of a garden, feed the cows, work in the fields, go sky gazing and treasure hunting in the mountains nearby, go for a picnic under the trees, learn carpentry and play with the kids? Sounds fun, right? You would be surprised to know that such an institution with an ideology exists for over 85 years. I remember visiting such a campus as a kid for the sole reason of getting to know where my family came from. For a kid living in the urban, this place was like visiting one's ancestral home in the village. Only 3 years ago, I realized that what I called my home was one of the many outcomes of Mahatma's ideology, Nai Talim. This campus was an initial examples in the Saurashtra region based on the pedagogy of Nai Talim. This institution is named Lok Bharti Gram Vidyapit, located in Sanostra village of Bhavnagar district. In the year 1937, in the article Harijan, Mahatma Gandhi wrote about the education system he had been experimenting with for over 40 years. He came up with an educational system and named it Nai Talim. He had been experimenting with this way of life since his days in South Africa. He came to India and set up the Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad and Sevagram Ashram in Wardha, which became the main places of his experimentation in Nai Talim. Gandhiji believed that the foundation of all social and moral education was from the intimate relationships of a home. He was clear about three things when it came to the upbringing of children and their education. They should live at home and not sent to a residential school. They should learn in their own language, and they should not have any privileges with which other children could not share. His ideas of education and sustainable lifestyle are still of relevance today. Following his footsteps, Sri Nanabhai Bhatt and Sri Manubhai Pancholi decided to implement it in a village in Amla near Bhavnagar in the year 1938, just a year after the article was given in the Harijan. 15 years after the establishment of the school, the need for an institution that provided higher education to the students came into an account. Thus, Lok Bharti Gram Vidyapit was set up in 1953. A wonderful example of how this Vidyapit was envisioned can be understood by the initially constructed buildings by Sri Nanabhai Bhatt. In the image, you can see 8 blocks, out of which the ones marked in the orange are the homes of the founders and the teachers of this institution. The rest 4 blocks are the hostel blocks where the student would live and study together. Looking at the hostel blocks in plan, you would see that the rooms would have the ostri on either side, and the odo would be a space for sleeping at night and studying during daytime. A fadiu connecting the kitchen and these rooms, kitchen store and these rooms could be seen, thus reflecting a typical house typology of Saurashtra region as well as the ashrams built by Mahatma Gandhi. These are few of the images that have been currently captured by me in past 2 years ago. So as you can see, there is this classroom and this sleeping area, which is as a multifunctional, and it would feel like a home to you. And nobody would come to know that this is a school where students are studying. So that is an interesting typology to look at. For 70 long years, this Vidyapit is working towards creating an individual free from dependency and ignorance. It is a place of values and not just an educational institution. It is a place of learning, living, and working together. A place that teaches an individual to live a life through experiences, experimentation, and education, just the way Mahatma Gandhi had envisioned the true idea of freedom. Our freedom from Britishers was a 200-year-long journey, but detaching our mind, body, and soul is an ever-evolving process towards one's own search for truth and nonviolence. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, Verma. The idea of education as the fundamental sort of component for a deeper freedom, for true liberation. So many of our founding fathers, it was an idea that was close to them. It is so inspiring to see that Nai Talim actually had many functioning prototypes and you were able to visit one. Some of these are ideas that we're talking about now, about infusing skill into our education system, so on and so forth. But these were ideas that were thought about earlier, and there is a whole history to it. So thank you so much for sharing it. At this point, I'm going to present from the Palakkad chapter. I'm going to present a story about a young person in Palakkad. Palakkad is, Kerala is a long slug-like state, and Palakkad comes in the center of it. And it's a rural area, it's an agrarian area. And this story comes from Palakkad about something that happened during the freedom movement in Palakkad. So this was a year, the year was 1908. A young man from the Brahmin Agraharam of Kalpati in Palakkad completes his undergraduate studies and heads to the big presidency city of Madras for his law education. It was a shift that opened up a world of exciting possibilities and new ideas for him, this move from a village to this big city. There he comes in contact with a number of the best minds of the region, both among his teachers and his fellow students. He engages with the big ideals of the time: freedom, equality, fraternity. It was during his time in Madras that he was powerfully influenced by South India's revolutionary poet, Bharatiya, Subramanya Bharati, whose words had the effect of an electric charge on him. In this phase, when his political consciousness was maturing, it was also the time that Gandhi returned to India from South Africa. His entrance to the freedom movement set off a new imagination that captivated so many. Gandhiji made it clear that the movement for political freedom from the British would have no meaning unless it was accompanied by a committed struggle to free ourselves from our own social evils. The oppressiveness of the caste system was among the greatest barriers that had to be broken. On completing his law education, our young man returned home with a law degree. More important, the great ideals that he had discovered, in which he now believed passionately, gave him a sense of his mission in life. He committed headlong to the life of a social activist, a social and political activist. The Palakkad of that time was a place of deep and widespread caste discriminations. The idea of caste purity kept the Dalits in conditions that were often subhuman. Poverty, disease, superstitions reigned in the life of communities like the Nayadis. In their efforts to address this, the young lawyer and his associates organized a form of action rooted in nonviolence. It was called Mishra Bhojana. It involved organizing a meal wherein progressive members of the upper caste would sit with those from the lower caste and eat together in an act that would bring out their shared humanity. While seemingly simple, it attracted the grave ire of the upper caste orthodoxy. And so, in 1923, a Mishra Bhojanam was organized as part of the second convention of the Congress in Kerala that was held in Palakkad. It was a widely publicized event. Some of its tallest leaders of the Congress, including Sarojini Naidu, Rajagopalachari, participated. The venue was adjacent to a colony of the Nayadi community. The event and its success attracted wide attention to its young organizers. It was all too much for the Brahmins of Kalpati, the village from which our young man came. On return from the event, he was met with barriers at the entrance to the village. The village elders told him that they had decided to excommunicate him. They also forbade him from meeting his wife. His young wife, Ishwari, however, was made of sterner stuff. She broke free and would accompany her husband in the path he had chosen, no matter how hard it might be. And it indeed was hard. They were homeless and penniless for days till some well-wishers offered to help them. In time, Gandhiji got to know of this remarkable story. He even wrote about them in the Young Indian. He sent instructions that the young couple should build an ashram at the site of the Mishra Bhojanam that they had conducted and dedicate their lives to the work of creating a brighter future for children of the subjugated castes. And they built such a humble ashram, and it soon became the center of their work and that of their cohort in Palakkad. Fond of his young follower, Gandhiji visited and stayed at the ashram on 3 occasions. The ashram became the site for many important meetings and discussions, especially on the eve of the historic Vaikam Satyagraha, which led to the landmark Temple Entry Proclamation. Through it all, the young couple remained committed to the hard and often dangerous work of challenging caste norms, steadfast in the justness of their cause. They faced trumped up charges, incarceration, and brutality at the hands of the police. It all took a tragic toll eventually. In 1935, a young man, even then just 44, passed away. He did not live to see independent India. It was still a long decade away. But like so many others of that generation, it was the rightness and the bigness of the ideas of that movement that mattered. They lived for the cause of a greater freedom. The ashram in Palakkad that he founded was the Shabari Ashram. The name of that remarkable young man was T.R. Krishnaswamy. Thank you so much. So I think I should congratulate myself. I did.
No, it's been wonderful. It was so nice. I was listening to the stories, and I was thinking, I was transported actually to that era. Lovely illustrations, lovely slides, and it's unfair that you introduced yourself. I was about to, but then it happened.
It's okay. It's the INTACH family, and it's fine. But just a quick word. Those lovely little illustrations were done my colleague Sanusha, who's also an INTACH member. So a little shout out to Sanusha for being here on Independence Day and putting it together.
Thank you, Arun, for putting up this event and for bringing all of us together. Okay.
We did it together. But the important thing is that stories of this nature, there are so many of those stories in every part of the country where young people, they were charged up by this big idea and they threw their life at fulfilling the possibilities of those ideas. So it was not an isolated incident. There were so many others, and we owe it to that generation to not forget them, to in some small manner sort of bring those ideals into our lives and in the time we live in. So great.
Sure. Thank you for bringing this story to life. It's so much knowledge to be gained from listening to this micro histories of independence. Thank you.
So next comes another iconic incident that all of us, iconic site and a location that we're all familiar with. But when we think about it, usually those thoughts are touched by a certain amount of gloom, a certain amount of dread, because it was not a happy place. But then many things happen there about which we need to know. To talk about what the people tree at of Port Blair, there's a people tree at the cellular jail, the stories that the people tree remembers. My friend from the Andaman chapter of INTACH, Abhijit, is here with us. Over to you, Abhijit.
Thank you, Arun, and happy 77th Independence Day from a place which is just not historic, but really historic in the sense of the term, that the first Indian flag was hoisted here on this soil of Andamans in 1943, the first tricolor, so to say. And it's a privilege for me as an Indian primarily, to be present today with all of you, sharing it on the Independence Day, of the 77th Independence Day. I would like to share the story of the people tree. This people tree is in the courtyard or in the premises of the cellular jail. And it's got a story because that's the mouthpiece of the light and sound show of the cellular jail light and sound show. So a few incidents, and it goes like this. I am the old people tree in the courtyard of the infamously famous cellular jail of Port Blair, Andaman Nicobar Islands. Do you know that I have escaped the axe ever since the construction began in 1896? The mammoth jail came up over a period of 10 years, built inch by inch by the prisoners, the political prisoners themselves, and with a total expenditure of just about a little over 5 lakhs. Since then, I have been witness to many brave hearts walking into these single cellular jail cells, the khopris, as one would call in Hindi, some never to return, sacrificing their lives for the freedom of our country. While some could bear the torture or pass the time and eventually walk out free from these large iron doors of the mammoth jail as it stands today. The face of the famous and the notorious jailer, David Barry, is still vivid and fresh in my memory. His voice echoing in my head as I get goosebumps even today when I heard him say in 1911, when Vinayak Savarkar walked into these jail premises through the iron doors. He said, "Look, Savarkar, you have 2 lifetimes to spend in these jails. That's 50 years. Do you think you will survive to live through these years?" And imagine Savarkar replying back within seconds without even reverting to any other thought. He said, "Do you think you Britishers will remain in our country for so long?" That was 1911. Savarkar's cell on the block which you see on the screen is on the right corner on the 3rd floor with a psychological double pressure, double door with the gallows below, where 3 people were hung every time together so that Savarkar could hear the pains of those 3 braveheart prisoners from the Indian freedom struggle fighters fraternity. The loud protests of "Inqilab Jindabad, Inqilab Jindabad, Hamari Mange Puri Karo, Hamari Mange Puri Karo" still reverberate in my ears. Inhuman living conditions forced the inmates to go on a hunger strike, and this had put the entire country on its toes. The atrocious jailer, David Barry, once again, force-fed many of the prisoners and inmates, led to the death of one very famous freedom fighter, Mahavir Singh. I understand from some of the people who said, standing below me, that they had put him in a gunny bag and just dumped him into the sea outside. How inhuman. The one bright spot in my memory, however, is my remembrance of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose walking down my ramparts, just in behind me, just beside me, alongside me, with his great personnel from the Azad Hind Force. This was when the Japanese occupied the islands in 1942. The Second World War damaged and demolished the 3 wings of the 7 wings that had been built by the prisoners in the cellular jail. And after independence, I saw one more wing of the jail being demolished. I stood in fear, waiting when it is going to be my turn to be cut down. But the political prisoners fraternity and the people who had served sentence in this cellular jail stood up at that point of time to my good fortune, and the demolition stopped. The 3 wings were later on converted into a national memorial. Today, this memorial was declared by the then Prime Minister, Shri Morarji Desai, on the 11th of February, 1979, in the courtyard of the cellular jail. I stand still today, just as you enter the jail. And the tourist guides stand below my shade, and I hear them telling stories about the cellular jail to the visitors who flock this from all parts of the country and the world. I have now traveled to homes all over the world through the pictures that they take of me and the jail premises. In June 1998, inclement weather, heavy rainfall, and a lot of windy, gusty storm uprooted me, and I was practically gone. I was uprooted. The huge stature of my size was on ground inside the cellular jail. I was like on a ventilator in an ICU. But thanks to the Andaman Nicobar administration and some good-hearted people, conservationists, who came forward, took me up, planted me again, gave me a lease of fresh life. Had it not been done that point of time, today, I would not have been here on this 15th of August, 2023, narrating this story to so many people all around the country and abroad. As the jail gets opened in the morning hours, the jail premises is filled with people from all over the country and abroad, in different colors of dress, bearing different religious inclinations, belonging to different communities, speaking different languages, having different sentiments, with different perspectives. But as they walk down, as they walk beside me, I find them all in reverence. Most of them, not all. And I get transported to the world of today, the colorful world of green, red, yellow, which was not there. Come evening, light and sound show of the cellular, the National Memorial, uses me as the mouthpiece of the show. I become the voice of the show. I narrate the story of what happened inside the jail, what happened outside the jail, and what it is about the Andaman Nicobar Islands that fascinates people from all over the world, that they flock this at one point of the time or the other. As night sets in and the huge iron doors close, it's time to relive those moments of torture and horror again. It's gloomy, it's dark. And I find myself in the company of those great brave hearts, those brave revolutionary freedom fighters who had laid down their lives, sacrificed their prime youth, and even given up lives here so that people like you could be free today in a free nation 77 years after 1947. At times, I feel bad. I feel ironic that the cellular jail in which I stand today is yet to get its due reverence. The people come in here as pure visitors, just like another tourist place. But is it really just a tourist place? It's a question, and it's something to think over. I consider myself privileged that I stand tall, hale and hearty in an altar of sacrifice, a place of pilgrimage, a place where, as an Indian, if one has not visited in a lifetime, has not probably done justice to his patriotic feelings and his patriotic fervor. I have been witness to the extreme sacrifices of our fearless revolutionaries and the freedom fighters. Time and again, I hear people whisper standing below my shades that what they saw, the names that they saw in the museum galleries, they don't find place in the history books that the children today are taught. Are our children really getting to know our real history? Do they really know the names of the people who also did contribute to the freedom of today? Another question which haunts me, and I have no other way but to take this forum to ask you, do you have an answer to that? I once again feel privileged that I stand still, taking guard at a place of pilgrimage, an altar where so many sacrificed lives so that India could be free today. I am honored. I am the people tree of the National Memorial, the cellular jail of Andaman Nicobar Islands. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Jai Hind. Brilliant, Abhijit. I don't think anybody here has answers, but I would imagine the answer to that question somehow would be to have more people such as yourself tell that story with the gravity it requires, was steeped in that history, and tell it with all its importance, all its significance, its somberness. So thank you so much. Incredible. It was from a place which inspired fear in the strongest of the men who were taken there. We moved to a young man who strangely never knew fear. He was faced with the most fearsome of prospects in life, but not once was he known to betray a sense of fear. To talk about that young man, I invite my senior colleague, General Balwinder Singh, who's the convener of the Punjab State Unit of INTACH. General Singh, are you here? Okay, so I'm assuming that it's one of those little glitches that we all face in this this world of sitting in different places and making an event, being part of an event together. I'm hopeful that he'll be able to come. I can see him in the list, so let's hope that he will be here with us in a bit. So I'm just moving over. I'm skipping one turn and moving to Manish Sinha, who's part of the Gaya chapter of INTACH. Manish will talk about another young man who was very remarkable, who inspired many young people, who had a very singular view of how freedom should be won. He will talk about such a young man. He will also talk about a few things connected with that experience from his part of the country, Gaya. Manish, over to you.
Thank you so much, Arun. And now, good evening to all of you, and greetings of the 77th Independence Day. Actually, I come from Gaya. I work here. I teach history as a professor at the university over here. So in 1922 December, from 26th of December till 1st of January, Gaya played host to a very momentous event. That was the Gaya Congress. And Gaya Congress was organized just against the backdrop of the suspension of the non-cooperation movement. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. We can hear you.
So it was, as we all know, that the non-cooperation movement was suspended, and there were divisions within the Congress. One group which was led by Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das, Motilal Nehru, Subhash Babu, he was also with them. So they were for entry into the council. Elections were to be held in 1923. And the other group who were the supporters of the Mahatma, led by Rajendra Prasad Vallabhbhai Patel, they were known as the No Changers, and they were against council entry. So Gaya witnessed a galaxy of leaders. Now the young man Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das was the president-elect of this Gaya Congress, and Motilal Nehru was the secretary. So when Deshbandhu arrived, and from the railway station he was taken he was taken to the venue. Along with him, there was a young man who was holding his briefcase, and he was the center of attraction of all the people there, all the audience. He had been just released from prison after serving for 1 year, and he had resigned from the Indian Civil Services. He was Subhash Babu. In the picture you can see, in the middle is Deshbandhu, and on his right is Hakim Azmal Khan, and then just adjacent to Hakim Azmal Khan is Motilal Nehru. But Gaya Congress is is a collection of many stories, not one story. Another very important story, or very touching story, was that a group of Tana Bhagats. Tana Bhagats were a puritanical sect of Adivasis living in the districts of Ranchi and Khuti, and they had disbelief in Gandhi Baba, you know. So they all the way trekked from Ranchi to Gaya on foot. Ranchi to Gaya, it is 300 kilometers. And when they arrived at Gaya, they saw that the venue was not prepared enough. A lot of groundwork had to be done. There had been unusual rains. So Dr. Rajendra Prasad, our first president, he notes down in his autobiography that they came to the organizers and they said, please give us some shovels and baskets. And they were given those shovels and baskets. And there, night and day, they had arrived 2 or 3 days earlier. For 2 and 3 days, apart from eating and their daily needs, they worked day and night. And the ground was prepared fully well for the Gaya Congress. So Rajendra Babu reminisces in his autobiography that we gave them Gandhi caps. And he said that after a few years, when I went to Ranchi, so those Tana Bhagats, they proudly showed me those caps. So that was a very, very memorable event. Then again, the Gaya Congress tells you a lot about the level of politics, the level of discourses. There was a drift in the Congress. There was a split in the Congress at the end of the Congress. Deshbandhu and Motilal Nehru, they separated and they formed another party that was not exactly separate from the Congress, but within the Congress, it was known as the Swaraj Party. So there were differences of opinion. Now, Rajendra Babu, he was the temporary chairman of the reception committee, but he was the tallest leader over there. Gandhiji was already under arrest. So two very important leaders, they were Natarajan and MS Chekar from the central provinces. They could not be elected to the Gaya Congress as delegates of the Congress because the supporters of Gandhiji, the no changers, they were more in number. But Rajendra Babu ensured that these two people, these two leaders, Jaikar and Natarajan, they should be attending Gaya Congress as delegates. And what he did, in spite of the fact that he belonged to another faction of no changers, knowing very well that Natarajan and Jaikar, they were pro-changers, he got them elected from Bihar. And both Mr. Jaikar and Mr. Natarajan, they both attended the Gaya Congress. So this, in fact, was a very important event, and that tells you a lot about the standard of politics in those days, in spite of the difference of opinions. Another story is that Gaya Congress was held against the backdrop of Ahmedabad Congress. Now, Gujarat was a rich area. Ahmedabad Congress, that was done on a grand rural town. So Rajendra Babu and Nura Narayan Singh, and I have got a personal, connection with the Gaya Congress. That my own maternal grandfather Nana, he was one of the assistant secretaries of Pradesh Congress Committee. He was very intimately organized with the organization of the Gaya Congress. His name was Jagat Narayan Lal. And I have just recently edited his autobiography, which was published in 1946. Maybe I can share just a minute. Look, just a minute. Let me go on. I think I will be having difficulties with time because time is less. So maybe when the final outcome is there, then I can be sharing more slides. So funds were hard to come. There was one, Rajendra Babu remembers that there was one gentleman, a big Jamindar from Gaya. I know his name, but even but it will not be proper to take his name. So in those days, the membership registration was 25 rupees. So this big Jamindar of Gaya, he said that I will give 5,000 rupees, and he brought in membership forms of 25 members, and 5,000 rupees were collected, and he was trying to register those members by giving money on their behalf. So he gave that list, but Rajendra Babu says that we understood that this gentleman was trying to become the chairman of the registration committee, because if he is getting members selected to the Congress, these members will vote for him. So they said that we understood his motive and we returned that money. So it was all so, so ethical, and everything was so, it was from another plane when we remember those things. So that's it. And in spite of the differences of opinion over there, another event was that Congress sessions, annual sessions, they used to be big events. And Congress at that point of time was not just a party, it was a platform for very diverse interests. And as you know, as communalism became projected later on, so we cannot contextualize history. So Muslim League session was also going on, Hindu Mahasabha session was also going on. Madan Mohan Malviya had come for the Hindu Mahasabha session, and Rajendra Babu was there. So that was also a very important event. But overall, apart from the politics, as we all know, that Swaraj Party came to be born. The Congress asked Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das to continue as the Congress president. But Deshbandhu said that, look, since we have got differences of opinion and now Swaraj Party is going to be formed, so I would not take up the presidentship of the Congress for the year 1923. And in this way, a new party came into being. But overall, the relations, the level of discussions, and the ethics, those all were very tall order, which makes us remember that the politics of the day, as we compare the politics of yesterday, what a contrast it is. When in spite of major differences, you have got such healthy discussions going on with due respect to each other.
True.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Manishji. So when we all study the history of the freedom movement, we keep reading obligatory reference to this Congress, that Congress. You talk about many places where Congress conventions took place, but we don't really know in granular detail what happens there. And you presented this wonderful little sort of view of what a Congress is, how these sort of annual Congress meets were, from the point of grassroots workers, from the point of the big leaders who are involved. You gave a glimpse of the sort of the hard politics that inevitably was part of it, but also the higher values that animated the people who were involved in that area. But more importantly, you gave the sense that this was a big platform, and a platform that encompassed so many strands of ideas, many approaches. They were all able to come together and they could talk to each other. And that, I think, is a lesson for all of us today, that, we could differ, but we should still talk to each other without slinging mud, without, being ugly about it. So I'm very grateful that you made that presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And we have General Singh back on, and General Singh will talk about this remarkable young man who needs no introduction, but still it's a story that never fails to inspire. General Singh, please go ahead.
Thank you, Arun. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major General Balwinder Singh, Punjab State Convener. My story is on a person who became a symbol for our youth during independence. Shaheed Bhagat Singh, a freedom fighter and revolutionary, who remained iconic figure for all of us and for the future generations to exemplify the requirement for our freedom movement. His quote is, "They may kill me, but they cannot kill my ideas. They can crush me, but they will not be able to crush my spirit, which are ingrained in the museum at Khatgar Kala, approximately 40 kilometers away from Jalandhar." This young man was hanged on 23rd of March 1931, along with his comrades Rajguru and Sukhdev. All three embraced the gallows with a spirit of unveiled sacrifice for our motherland. He was revolutionary by his traits, who always proclaimed freedom is an imperishable birthright of all. The word which still resonates in our ear is Inqilab Jindabad, the catchphrase which was popularized by him. That is, long live the revolution. In 1928, he plotted to kill police chief for the death of Indian writer and a politician, Lala Lajpat Rai. As a matter of fact, Lala Lajpat Rai was the founder member of a national college where he studied. In 1929, he lobbed a bomb at the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi to protest for the implementation of Defense of India Act. His all actions, if we see, are incomparable. I would like to highlight some of the final movements of his. His execution was preponed by a day, and when the time for his execution approached, Bhagat Singh was engrossed in reading a book. He started reading it faster and asked the jail official to wait for a while as one revolutionary is speaking to another. All three of them, that is Rajguru and Sukhdev, when they came out of their cells, they hugged each other, shouted Inqilab Jindabad, and dawn with the British Empire. Bhagat Singh was the first one to be hanged, followed by Rajguru and Sukhdev. And their bodies were secretly cremated and remains were thrown in the Satluj River. He was a revolutionary personality. We are very much aware of it. When one of the prisoners asked the jail warden how he behaved at the last moment, he sobbed and said, he has not seen such a brave young man who embraced death with such a cheerful face. His father, the second incident, his father sent an application to the special tribunal defending his son in Lahore case. And you will be surprised what he wrote. If someone else would have done this, I would not have considered him less than a traitor. Those were the feelings which he was carrying. Initially, the Bhagat Singh lawyer tried to prevail upon to seek pardon, and he rejected the idea with the contempt. Jawaharlal Nehru once said, after he was hanged, Bhagat Singh did become popular because he seemed to vindicate the honor of Lala Lajpat Rai, and through him, the nation. He became a symbol, and the popularity and the man achieved was something amazing. The photographs which you see right in front of you are his grandparents' house, which is approximately, I said, 35 to 45 kilometers from Jalandhar. And as a matter of fact, he was born in Lalpur, which is in Pakistan, and studied also in Pakistan, Lahore, but very frequently he used to come to this place, which is a National Heritage Memorial. Next photograph. This is from where at that time there was a well, and this is what is there presently at Khatkar Kala. Next. The photograph which you see it here, I am also standing there, and his lineage is there, and this photograph was collected on 23rd March 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that story never fails to sort of inspire and also almost in a sense make us feel small, because which youngster today would have that kind of fearlessness? He was at 23, like he was, what is it? He was just somebody who had finished his undergraduate degree or probably his postgraduate degree. So a very young man. And ahead of him was all his life's dream. There were his near and dear ones, aspirations. And yet he knew for sure that his life was about to end. And not a moment of remorse, not the slightest sense of fear. Remarkable man. And we'll never know what was the stuff he was made of. But incredible story. Thank you so much, sir. And very, in a small way, inspiring to know that you're able to connect through the chapter with Bhagat Singh's family. Thank you so much for presenting it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. From personalities, the freedom movement was about personalities, about ideas, about movements, about places. And now from this iconic individual, we move to a movement, to a protest movement that had a significant impact. It was a landmark political movement. It took place in Gujarat. To talk about that, I invite my friend architect Binita to present the story of how the villagers would call him Sardar. And the title sort of betrays the content of the story. Binita, are you here?
Thank you, Arun.
Yeah.
Happy Independence Day to all. In the history of freedom fight of India, Satyagraha became a very important tool. And the idea of collectively opposing injustice, especially by weaker and oppressed sections of the society with non-violence, was the idea behind it. Gandhiji explained it as Satyagraha as a multi-edged sword, where nobody gets hurt, no blood shedding, and it has got a very big impact. Nationwide, many satyagrahas were carried out before Bardoli. And in fact, at Bardoli, it was planned much earlier than 1928, but was put on hold due to Chorachori incident when Gandhiji felt that probably the nation is not prepared yet. Then what made Bardoli as a remarkable event? Let me introduce Bardoli is located 50 kilometers away from the urban center, even then also Surat, towards the east side, and it was on the edge of a large tribal area of South Gujarat, tribal farmers, tribal landholders, and there were also Patidar Parsi Muslim large farmers. On the postponement of Satyagraha, the freedom fighters or the volunteers working in those areas charted out to work for people with Rachnatmak Karyakram like Khadi, Nai Talim, Darubandi, eradication of untouchability and other activities. Centers like Vedchi, like you see on map, Vedchi, Walod, Varad, Sarbon became very active. During British rule, Bombay Presidency used to revise rates after every 30 years for the revenue evaluation, and the revision was due in year 1926. After the survey, a report was prepared under Mr. Jaikar, then the Deputy Collector of Surat district. The rise was by 25% on existing revenue. And additionally, some villages were upgraded, so they had faced double blow. And that became almost 30% to some of the villages. The indicators under consideration were baseless as per the local people, because the arguments which were set were that Tapti railway line has become a facility, there are good road connectivities, increase on population in Bardoli, an increase of number of Pakka houses, whereas actually Bardoli has started having connection with South Africa and there was a better living standard, that it had nothing to do with the farming land. On failure of dialogues with local representatives, leaders of local farmers went to meet Vallabhbhai Patel at Sabarmati. He was very well experienced with 3 satyagraha on his name, that was Kheda, Nagpur and Borsad. He said, not just additional tax, but if you are prepared to pay no revenue tax and prepared to face the consequences, then only come to me. And he additionally said that this is not an issue at taluka level, but at a national level, so we fight to win. As Talati of taluka started the process for putting revenue notices, the leaders of local farmers, they went to villages to talk to people, and within a week, they again went back to Vallabhbhai to confirm their readiness to fight. Vallabhbhai went, after the confirmation, Vallabhbhai went to all villages personally and talked to people explaining the outcome. The most interesting part was people were also ready with a kind of small poems or songs, or the kind of some what we call pankti. Hame darta nathi, hame koi thi re, hame bahadur ne barwan. That is like we are not fearing anyone, and we are strong and fearless. And we will stick to the vow that we have taken, even if we are cut into pieces. Freedom fighters and political leaders joined hands from the province, almost around 100 people of them. But most important was the unity of the people of all caste, religion, economic strata, including Muslim, Parsis, Pardars, and Adivasis. Vallabhbhai Sardar, as he was entitled now, wrote a letter to the government requesting reconsideration. And governor was not in a mood, so called Sardar and other people who had joined the movement as outsiders. Who would answer this better than Sardar? He said, I am helping my people and showing you your mistakes, but you are speaking on behalf of the government, which is headed by outsiders only. I have come because they called me to help, but they can send me back anytime. But how nice it would be for them if they could bid you goodbye, all the foreigners who are exploiting them. The next step government took was of auctions. When that also got difficult because nobody participated in auctions largely, Pathan were put by the government to handle the situation. They broke houses, broke rain kothis, they broke vessels and took away kettles. Someone thought a few lines on this also. And that was the humor as a tool, that Pathans to the right of them, Pathans to the left of them, Pathans in front of them, police on the tail of them, marched the Buffalo Brigade. And one Adivasi was also noted saying, "Ke saab, aap chai pee lo, but I will not give you even a 1 rupee for the revenue." Within 15 days, the government decided to succumb. Committees were formed from both sides of to evaluate. The long procedure of 6 months brought a report in January 1929. The revenue was reduced with some other economic benefits like not putting revenue on grassland or lands which are non-farming. This was not a victory of just a victory of a common people. The whole nation was aware about the movement through the daily reporting through Young India and Navjivan. And all the leaders like Rabindranath Tagore and many more were reacting on this. It was also a big milestone in the history of the freedom fight as it was after 4 years of stagnancy in freedom, something had come out as a concrete. This brought great enthusiasm and confidence to the experiment of non-violent movement as the fight was on values rather than the prestige. The biggest thing was that this path had to reach to a great momentum after Quit India movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Binita. We live in a time when politics is fought on a TV screen, on social media pages. It is so good to see how in a different era, politics involved talking to people, building consensus, so talking them through the periods of self-doubt to galvanize unified views, to hold them at points of doubt. But above all, what made Sardar, from your story, what sort of marked Sardar's leadership was the fact that he had seen through a whole roadmap for the protest and he prepared his people for what would come. So true mark of leadership. It was not left to the exigencies of the movement. Thank you so much for taking us through the granular details of whatever was possible in a short time of what it was to live in that time in this iconic movement. Thank you so much, Binita. And now we're sort of at the halfway point. We crossed the halfway point. There are 6 presenters have spoken. Now we shall go to an event that the world is familiar with. It's an image that the world is familiar with. Probably only 1 or 2 people in the world could be associated with an icon that is so distinctive. But there is a history to how that iconic form came about. To talk about that story, I invite my friend Vani Chenguttavan from the Madurai chapter to present. Hi, Vani.
Hi. Iconic identity of Mahatma Gandhi is simple clothing of a commoner. Where, when, and why did this come into effect? This new lasting identity of Gandhiji came into effect at Madurai as how Madurai, the prevalent cultural capital of Tamil Nadu, was referred in those days. On September 22nd, 1921, when Gandhiji was on his 2nd visit to Madurai for public meetings in which liberal donations would be handed over for the cause of Swaraj and Khilafat movement. Indeed, the thoughts of a change was in his mind for some time. The change of his appearance and attire was dramatic. A bare head and bare minimum clothing was considered true to heartfelt humility, which he will uphold at all times. This renunciation on his part of tonsuring and discarding formal clothing became a revolutionary gesture. A public manifesto of Mahatma Gandhi on change of attire was handed over to Sri Krishna Das who served as a personal attendant to make copies. Composed in his train journey towards Madurai the previous day, the copies were posted at the railway station late in the night to be published in selected newspapers. Then a barber was summoned so late to shave his head. Reverently, the barber took the dust off Mahatma Ji's feet and got onto his task of shaving with all possible care. Having felt privileged to touch the body of Mahatma Ji, the barber declined remuneration despite repeated offers. Mahatma Ji's followers were anxious as they realized his change of costume and demeanor was not going to be temporary. Rising up early in the twilight hours, Mahatma Ji pondered very deeply in the solemn stillness broken only by the chirping of birds. Finally, deciding on the course of his action, Mahatma Ji embraced the humble, hand-woven kadar. His appearance was similar to the garb of a sannyasi or fakir. But Mahatma Ji assured his associates it was no part of his intention to become one. The new style of dressing he was adopting was nothing strange to the people of Madras Presidency, who went about with bare bodies. Thereupon he was clad in a new piece of kadar, not more than a cubit in width round his loins. In a little kadar bag made by him, he placed the things that were usually placed in the pocket of his vest. The day was set for a journey by motor to the town of Karaikuri. 4 cars were waiting to take Mahatma Ji and his followers. The people of Madurai gathered on the road as they did the previous day on his arrival to have a glimpse of him. The tremendous crowd was in for a stunning spectacle. Ruddy streaks of light from the rising sun fell on his bare head and limbs. Mahatma Ji appeared to be a radiant mass of light. The spotlight Mahatma Ji gained in Madurai became symbolic of his message of cultural pride. The use of Swadeshi goods as opposed to those manufactured in Europe, self-reliance and solidarity with the rural masses of India. Nandri, Valga Bharatam Adithirunadu.
How nice that you closed with a small piece of a Tamil couplet. I don't know how many people know that the decision to, effect a changeover took place in Madurai. So thank you so much for sort of recounting that tale. And it's very interesting that he himself sort of discounted the idea that this was any attempt at being a saint, but rather that's all he needed in India's climate, and it was sort of unconscionable to use more clothes than what was strictly necessary when so many people didn't have it. Thank you so much, Vani. And now we move to a part of the country that, at least where I'm sitting, we don't always associate with the freedom. We don't know what happened there. And it may be that sitting there, they also probably have the same sentiment. They also wonder what happened in this part. So to talk about what happened in the lovely state of Uttarakhand, 2 of our colleagues are coming in. First, we'll have Surbhi, who heads a wonderful little initiative around heritage. I'm requesting Surbhi of the Mussoorie chapter to talk about a very unusual freedom fighter and a few other discoveries she made as she explored the freedom heritage of her region. Surbhi, over to you.
Thank you so much. Namaskar and good evening, everyone. A very happy Independence Day to everyone. Mussoorie is a small hill town in the foothills of the Himalayas in Uttarakhand. It was established by the British and was their favorite hill resort, used for recuperation and recreation likewise. So much so that in 1857 freedom struggle, it was fortified as a safe haven for British women and children from the flatlands. Today, I will be delving in two stories, namely of Abbas Tayyibji and Jagannath Sharma. Due to health complications, Abbas Tayyibji's wife was recommended to move to the salubrious climate of the hills. Tayyibji was the Chief Justice of Baroda and was an active freedom fighter. He was fondly nicknamed Chota Gandhi for his work in salt satyagraha with Mahatma Gandhi. In 1917 to 1918, Abbas Tayyibji with his family rented a house in Rajkot, Mussoorie. In due course, he purchased the Southwood estate as the family was very fond of life in Mussoorie. But he was also involved in quiet meetings with fellow Indians like Abdul Aziz Khwaja. 1920 saw the first library for Indians being established. Also, he was visited by several associates and leaders of the period, also by Devdas Gandhi. The British were very skeptical of permitting Mahatma Gandhi to visit Mussoorie. But finally, in 1929, they consented, and what followed was a UP tour by Mahatma Gandhi, Miraben, and Kasturba Gandhi in October 1929, with 2 weeks spent in Mussoorie. In due course, Abbas Tayyibji's health started deteriorating. 1936, he was laid to rest in Mussoorie. His grave lies in dismal state, so as the intact Mussoorie chapter gets into shape, work will be carried to protect this heritage site. The second story is Jagannath Sharma, but in many ways, Abbas Tayyibji is a catalyst who led to the formulation of this story as well. Gandhiji's 1929 visit had lit a flame for an independent nation among the native citizens of Mussoorie. But due to the strict British rule, it could not get a free expression. Several student groups in schools exulted with the spirit of a free India came into being, but was soon deflamed. In 1938, a group of students from Gananand School decided to hoist the Indian national flag on the school rooftop. These were grade 8 students. They were opposed by another school group who said they should wait for 10 days as Srimati Vijayalakshmi Pandit will visit the school and they could request her to hoist the flag.
Surbi, so sorry for interrupting, but it looks like your voice is broken. I mean, we're getting it in bits. Does anybody else have the same problem, or is it just mine?
I also have that problem.
No, it's breaking here also.
Voice is breaking.
Maybe she can close the video.
Maybe you can close the video, or if you have a standby internet, maybe from your phone or something, probably you could use that.
We actually have a weather situation here, so
It's
because
so then probably
I'll
just probably
off
turn
my
off
video,
your
I
video. Yeah, but turn off your video and just speak. Thank you.
So in 1938, a group of students from Gananand School decided to hoist the Indian national flag on the school rooftop. They were opposed by another school group who said they should wait for 10 days as Srimati Vijayalakshmi Pandit will be visiting the school then and she could do the flag hoisting. But the conflict became, the groups arose, and as they were all standing on the rooftop, the school asked the police to interfere. This enraged the boys, and they decided to hoist the flag at that very moment, all the time reciting Vijay Bhav Tiranga Hamara Pyara. The leader was Jagannath Sharma, who hoisted the flag. But this was not a one-off incident for him. He had also formed the Golden Globe Club with his friends, which saw several promising activities. This group enjoyed several quiet meetings with neighbors like Kaja Abbas, who was also staying in the same neighborhood in the bazaar, Lando Bazaar. The leadership qualities of Jagannath Sharma were further polished as he became Hill student leader in Navy School Dehradun in 1942. This was the year of the Quit India movement. In several towns, the student leaders were leading as the elders were in jail. Jagannath Sharma became active in this movement. His father was totally against these roles, but his mother encouraged him to serve Mother India before he served his own mother. And due to his activities as a student leader, an arrest warrant was soon issued. He went into hiding, and from there he led the activities in Dehradun and around. These were non-violent and were not damage-causing. He remained in hiding in crematorium grounds for several months. Soon, India attained independence, and post-independence saw him as a leader in the state government. But he chose to come back to his hometown, Mussoorie, and help to build it with its present position. My search for the true stories of the freedom movement led me to his house in 2015. But he mostly spoke of his post-independence activities. The search for these stories is still on, but some of them can be seen in Mussoorie Heritage Center. Thank you.
Surbi, thank you so much. We knew very little about what happened in that part of the country. So thank you so much for telling those two stories. One was not very different from many figures that we know, but a young boy who's not even out of school. What pulled him, what drew him to do something which might today seem like a rash act in a British-controlled town to go and hoist the flag. So it's remarkable that something forced him to do it. What were those things that made him do it? It's just a remarkable vignette to know about. Thank you so much. And I'm so impressed by the fact that through the Mussoorie Heritage Center, you're exploring all these local stories, and I've seen some pictures of your work. So more power to you. And someday, hopefully, I'll be able to come and see it. And I hope others in the meeting who have not seen it would also be able to come and have the pleasure of you taking them through these stories in the person. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So from Mussoorie, we go to the wider state within which Mussoorie sits, which is the state of Uttarakhand. I invite my colleague Anjali Anjali is the state convener of the Uttarakhand chapter. Anjali to talk about a few incidents linked to the freedom movement from the wider state of Uttarakhand. Thank you very much. We can't hear you. Anjali, you may need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but it could probably be a little louder. Maybe you could come a little closer to the mic.
So, audible?
Yes.
So, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk of Uttarakhand's involvement in the Satyagraha, though it was a very short notice, but nevertheless, putting things together was difficult because there was a history of the entire state starting from 57, which had to be told. So, not taking too much of your time, we can start with the PPT. So Uttarakhand has a very unique identity. Before it is a state, but it is divided into Kumaon and Garhwal for all for various reasons, ethnically, language. Everything is very different. Though it is one state, but still you are actually seeing two different identities. So even when the British came in, it became the British Kumaon and the rest of it was Tehri state. Now, of course, we have 13 districts and which is called as one state. But in spite of that, in our minds, we are still Garhwal and Kumaon. So being a different terrain, the people of Garhwal and Kumaon contributed immensely to the freedom movement. M.N. Roy, Mahavir Tyagi, Govind Vallabh Pant, Badridat Pandey, Mukundilal Barrister, Dayanand Bharti, Pratap Singh Negi, a few names which you may be able to recollect, were all from Uttarakhand, which rose up to the national level. Gandhiji visited Uttarakhand 6 times, and I would be talking to you about 4 such visits. Next slide, please. The first time he came, when he was asked to take the movements forward in India, he was asked to visit and meet 3 people. One place was Haridwar. So he came to Haridwar in 1950 for the Kumbh Mela. And when he saw the Mela, of course, there was a lot of dirt. So he started his cleanliness drive there with the Sevadal workers. And in his autobiography, he wrote, and then the Kumbh Mela arrived. It was a great moment for me. I've never tried to seek holiness or divinity as a pilgrim, but 1.7 million people cannot be hypocrites. He also kept a diary of minor incidents, attending various other programs. He visited Swami Shraddhanand, who was the founder of the Gurukul Kangli University in 1920, which was his second visit. From his books, Uttar Pradesh Mein Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi or Gurukul, there are detailed accounts of his visits to Kumbh and also of the serene environments of the hill regions of Garhwal and Kumaon. Next slide, please. He came to Dehradun in 1929 and then went up to Mussoorie by the Khat Road. He planted a tree at Manav Bharati Vidyalaya in Dehradun. He planted, there was a portrait of Pandit Keshav Shastri, where the tree you can see in the image, and that is where he planted the tree. But if you notice the little plug, the tree was planted by Mahatma Gandhi in 29, and that is mentioned in small at the bottom, unlike what we, are used to seeing today, that whoever does the honor, their name is always, highlighted. And that is a picture of Mahavir Tyagiji with Mahatma Gandhi. So, and after, this is the Garhwal part of the story. In Kumaon, he traveled to Nainital, Almora, Bageshwar, Kasauni. If sometime you get to refer to the map of Uttarakhand, you will see that they also fall in one line, and they start from one end of the plain, starting from Bareilly, and go up to Kasauni, which is almost in the foothills. Next slide, please. So this is also a time when the British were here after the Gorkha Raj, and there were several socio-political movements which were happening in Uttarakhand, which were not there in the rest of the state, like the Kuli Begar system, where people had to contribute free labor and time. There was Doli Pratha, where the lower caste could not go for a wedding in a doli or a horse. There was the Road Commission. There were no roads till the British came in India in 1815. There were the grievances against the Forest Act, which was happening because the forests were now, which were a main source of livelihood, were controlled by the Forest Department and by the British. So the Satyagraha came as it came as a movement where all these things which people wanted to do away. This also provided a lot of inspiration to the Chipko and the anti-liquor protest. So the freedom fighters of the state wanted to put an end to these practices following the ethos of Satyagraha, which was with no loss of blood. And they also were successful in doing so. In 1920, Gandhiji stayed in Kasauni. Next slide, please. So these, I am very briefly talking of the very important places, but there are several other places where he stopped. He was traveling by car. Some places he was walking. So people have a lot of stories of seeing Gandhi, visited, eating with him, talking to him. So in once he reached Kasauni in 1920, he stayed at a place which is now called Gandhi Ashram, where he wrote his commentary on Anashakti Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, which is very highly praised by the readers of the Bhagavad Gita. And he was very impressed being in Kasauli, because from there he could see the entire range of the Himalayas, which is of course very beautiful. And in his newspaper Navjivan, he wrote, "I thought of the thoughts which could occur in the mind of a person from different mental backgrounds after feeling the greatness of Himalayan peaks, bright and full of snow." Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Puli beggar pratha which was going on, and the state leaders and the farmers wanted to end this pratha. I mean, carrying all the loads of the British government, which moved from places to places, which also included toilets. 21, he visited the Saryu River, where all the documents pertaining to the records which were maintained by the Patwari were drowned by the thousands of farmers who marched to Bageshwar and took an oath of not working for the British government under the leadership of Badridat Pandey, and then and hence this system of Puli Beggar came to an end. There were several meetings happening. Nainital also saw meetings happening at Naini Lake. There were people marching on the Mall Road. And this is also, like Sukhbi said, a place where the British, which was discovered or maybe settled by the British, but there were more British living there since it was the summer capital. The Viceroy House was there. So there were protests happening in Nainital also. And people were joining the Congress. There were movements happening. People mentioned the Gaya Congress. So all that was happening simultaneously. People were going down to the plains also to join the movements. In 1930, when the salt making satyagraha happened in Dehradun, next slide please. So this is with Badridat Pandey at Saryu. Next slide please. This is the Kasauni ashram where he stayed, and this is the hall inside the ashram, which is kind of maintained but not very well integrated. The simple place where he lived, where he could see the Himalayas. Next, please. So the Namak Satyagraha happened way down in Surat, and people at Uttarakhand up in the hills also wanted to participate in this movement. So there's a river close to the Dehradun at Vikas Nagar. It's called the Noon River, where the water is a little salty. So as a gesture, they boiled that water, produced salt, and brought it down to Dehradun, to the municipality and to the main shopping area where the British shops were, to sell salt. The thing went on for a few days. People got arrested. Then a new batch of people would arrive at that place. Next slide. So this is the place where the memorial is also there, and it's a small river. It's actually a rivulet, and which joins the other river. So they kept getting arrested, but they kept making salt as a mark of protest. And 3 ex-servicemen also from the state joined Gandhi on his Dandi march for making salt. So there are, this is the 85th anniversary. So as you can see, the movement is, I mean, I really like the monument, but it's not very well maintained, and thus we can do with a little bit of interpretation. There are several such sites in Uttarakhand which need to be looked into, and probably we could start talking about them. So we'd like to document them, document the stories also. And I'll really like it if somebody wants to come down to Uttarakhand to see these sites which are associated with the freedom movement.
Very nice, Anjali. Thank you so much. You know, the most interesting part was that makeshift stage that you showed in one of the pictures. And it seemed like, I don't know, like a couple of feet deep. So I was just, so the things like that must have happened a lot, where, you know, meetings were set up and there were no sort of facilities, and something was put together, and this elderly gentleman was made to climb and sit on its top, and then whatever, and he was generally a good sport from whatever one knows.
Obviously, so sometimes there were charpoys which were, you know, just
yeah. But that was a remarkable image to see how that was done. Thank you so much, Anjali. And as you rightly said, you barely had 48 hours or so to put it all together. So you still managed to convey the sense of what happened in that state and generally the contours of that movement in Uttarakhand. And we are definitely going to take you up on that offer and come and see all of those remarkable places there. Thank you so much.
Uniform state, and we would definitely like it to be on the map of India for all practical purposes, and talk of contributions to the. I mean, that was the whole idea of setting up the state, that we participate more with the national level politics.
You know, that thing, so we call the event Shared Histories. And so that thing that, you know, the big salt satyagrahas were happening in Dandi and all those places. But then there was this aspiration to replicate a similar sort of acts in various places. And you spoke about it, you know, salt being made off a riverbed. Similarly, that we had similar places here. So it kind of connects with things that happened all over. And it sort of reminds you that we're all part of a shared tapestry. So thank you so much. And so far, we've been talking about the British ruled provinces. We have been talking about regions that are, as with Uttarakhand, which were sort of British administered, almost like cantonment areas. We haven't spoken so much about the princely states. We now have a story from a princely state about which probably many of us don't know enough, and we should know. Is Pragya here? Okay, I'm not seeing Pragya.
Hello.
But Pragya, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes. We would also like to see.
Yes, can you see me?
Not yet.
Hello.
We can't see you yet, but I'm hopeful that will happen.
Am I visible?
Not yet. Unless it's a problem with my phone. Here you are. Okay. So the Pragya is the convener of the Tripura chapter of INTACH, and she's going to talk about what the movement for freedom looked like from the point of the almost independent states that were part of that wider tapestry of British India. And from what I understand, she was connected to that legacy at a personal level. She will talk about the last Maharaja, effectively the last Maharaja of Tripura, and how he looked at the onset of freedom. Over to you again.
Yes, thank you. Hello.
Pragya, we can hear you and see the slide.
I think it's yes, thank you. Yes, it's working now.
Pragya, are you saying something? We can't hear you.
Yes, can you, am I visible or?
No, the slides are visible. You are audible. You can start now.
Okay.
As you want the slides to move on, you can just say next and we'll keep moving.
All right, sure. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
firstly, a very big thank you for having initiated this lovely, this idea of having storytelling from all the different states. So also, hello.
Yeah, Pragya, you went away for a bit now.
Yes, I think maybe it's the network. So a very happy Independence Day to all of you from Tripura. And so today we are going to be speaking on chapters of a shared history, the last Maharaja of Tripura, and the decision he made. So, as you mentioned, not many people are familiar with the northeast of India and Tripura in particular. And so I'd just like to give you a brief background about the state. So let's go back into history. And so, as we all know, we have been talking about different movements against the British and partition. And today is a good day to reflect on, how all the states came together to form this big union called India. And that time of the British withdrawal, there were almost about 565 princely states that were officially recognized. And zamindars and jagirdaris, they were all also absorbed into what is today comprised of India. And amongst the states, Tripura and Manipur were the only two native independent states. And they signed the instrument of accession and the merger agreement finally on the 15th of October, 1949. So Tripura, again, I'll just go to the next slide, please. So the ruler that I'll be speaking about is Maharaja Bir Vikramanitya and the Maharani Kanchan Prabha Devi, as we can see here on the photographs that we have here. And we have a map in the middle of the northeast. And Tripura, at that point of time, consisted of two parts. There was a hill Tripura, which mostly constituted of the hilly areas, and most of the people were the indigenous Tripuris. We can show on the arrow over here. Yes, thank you. It's the little tip that is jutting into Bangladesh, present-day Bangladesh. And then there was the Plains Tripura. So the Plains Tripura comprised of the Chakla Roshanabad estate and was a zamindari of the Maharaja. About over 1,000 square miles of territory went into Pakistan, now Bangladesh, after the partition. And most of the revenue for the state used to come in from this particular area. And Tripura became a landlocked state soon after that. But let's talk about the challenges that came in prior to this. So the thing is, Tripura was a unique kind of a state in the sense it was surrounded on all sides, but the Maharaja was a very progressive person. He traveled far and wide all over the country, went abroad as well to Europe when it was unthinkable of, and met a lot of diplomats. And he was also very, how do I put it, intellectual, and loved to share ideas with different reformists, nationalists, and leaders who played an important part in the Indian freedom movement. Some of them were Tagore, Sarat Bose, Gandhiji himself. And as we can see here in this picture, so these interactions with nationalist leaders and reformers, and he studied in Shillong, and he was instrumental in starting his own army, the Tripura Rifles. And so he was in constant touch with the British regime as well, people from the different parts of colonial India. And he found out that, they wouldn't be here for too long. So he tried to do his best to build up the state of Tripura at that time. And so he was also instrumental in drafting the constitution of Tripura 9 years ahead of the Indian one. And this he did because he wanted democracy to come in and to help the population, the indigenous population especially, since the refugee crisis was growing. What had happened was Tripura is geographically placed between Bengal and the other parts of the northeast, such as Assam. And at that time, Myanmar also, Burma, was on the other side. So it was a very, very difficult situation for the ruler because, whenever they had to go to mainland India, they had to cross over rivers and then cross over via now present-day Pakistan. At that time, nobody envisaged that the state would be broken up into so many pieces. But in Tripura, the Maharaja he had the foresight, and so he realized that the Noakhali riots that took place soon after the Second World War in 1946, with the number of refugees that came into Tripura, Mahatma Gandhiji himself asked the Maharaja to open the gateways of Tripura. And so he did that, and over 15,000 refugees took refuge here. Over 50,000 people were affected at that point. But he was a humane ruler, and he helped them all. But unfortunately, he passed away at a very young age. And this was when he was only 39 years of age. On April 10th, 1947, I don't know if you have the photograph there of the Amrita Bazar Patrika had shared. I don't know if it's possible. It's not on the slide. But so that's when he announced formally to the entire public that he would like to be in India, because the growing danger of the movement from Pakistan, was coming into Tripura, and the Muslim League. Hello, I think I've lost you.
We can hear
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, the picture seems to have disappeared. Just a moment. The network is really bad. Yes, so this is what is showing right now is the constitution of Tripura, which was drafted 9 years ahead of the Indian one, because he wanted naturally a democracy to come in. And but can we go back to the previous picture, the one in the slide? Yes. So what happened is, like I said, the partisan movement had started was spreading all over Bengal, and Tripura was no exception, being very close to the borders. And the Maharaja, before he passed away, told the Maharani that we would be merging with India. And this was because a number of conspiracies were taking place at the same time in the 40s, from 1946 onwards. And after he passed away at the young age of 39, on the 17th of May, 1947, just a few months ahead of the Indian independence, his son, you can see here in this picture with the Rajmata, Maharani Kanchanprabha Devi, and Kirit Bikram Kishore Dev Barman. He was barely 14 at the time. So a Regency Council was formed, and she, along with the Maharaja, spoke to the Indian government, expressing their views about the growing conspiracies in Tripura, and how it was very difficult for them to stay protected. But by November 1947, a particular person called Muhammad Abdul Barik Khan, who's popularly known as Gedu Miya, he started off as just a mahot, but later on became a very rich contractor. So he, along with the then CM, Satyavrata Mukherjee, and another minister who was also, unfortunately, a close relative of the Maharaja, Durjay Kishore, they wanted to force Tripura to join Pakistan. And to counter this, several people came together at that point. There were different parties that were coming up, like the Congress and the Communist parties. And then another Vahini resistance force was created called the Kirit Bikram Raksha Vahini Resistance Force, because there were growing plans to kidnap the Rajmata and the young Maharaja as well. So at that time, it was a very, very difficult situation. There was almost a Kashmir-like situation where an invasion was supposed to take place. But fortunately, the Rajmata, well, she had to flee Tripura. And she went to Delhi. and finally signed the instrument of accession. And finally, we were able to merge Tripura with India. So there were a lot of things that happened in the meantime. And finally, Gedu Mia, well, nobody knows any more about him. It seems he disappeared into Pakistan, East Pakistan at that point. And then the CM, who was trying to, force Tripura to join Pakistan, he was also removed from his post. And then, of course, after a lot of problems, the Rajmata was able to finally speak to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel himself, and the agreement of accession was signed. And so this is what I feel, that, a lot of people don't know. We always talk about Kashmir and other states, but Tripura too had a similar problem. And the patriotism and courage that was displayed by Maharaja and his foresight way back, he was one of the first rulers to have expressed his desire to join India. And then his Maharani, despite everything, she was barely 31 or 32 years of age. So she had to fight a lot of forces in order to come to this decision. And I think we need to be more acquainted with these sort of studies. Historical documents are there, but we lose them all if we don't, have them in our curriculum. Because most people think of the Northeast as one little place which has, didn't have much of a role to play besides maybe, the Second World War. But yes, Manipur and Tripura, and Manipur, of course, is known now for a lot of other reasons. But we've had our own ethnic problems. But in the end of it all, there were patriots in Tripura as well. There were several movements, also in Chittagong Hill Tracts, and nobody ever even thought of it. In fact, the sad part is that Tripura was a big state and culturally and historically very progressive, democratic. We had both Muslims, Hindus, and other faiths residing and staying all together. Everything was very peaceful. It always takes a few, bad apples to spoil the rest of them. But the thing is, Tripura also lost a lot of territory to East Pakistan. And these were all the private properties of the Maharaja of Tripura at that point. And a lesser known fact is that the Chittagong Hill Tracts, they too wanted to be with India, and they even hoisted the Indian flag for 3 days. They flew it, but nobody took any recognition of this fact. I know this because I knew and I personally had met the Raja of the Mogs, the Chittagong Raja. So that's how. And I think I've also exceeded the time limit. And I thank you once again, all of you, for giving me a patient hearing. And this is a beautiful Neer Mahal Palace, the only lake palace after the one in Rajasthan, which is in Tripura, in a place called Udaipur. And it was made by Maharaja Bir Bikram. He was also a great architect and a visionary. And we'll be celebrating his birthday in Tripura on the 19th of August. He was born on 19th of August, 1908, and he passed away on the 17th of May, 1947. Very young age, 39 years of age. And he lived through a very tumultuous period, yet he was patriotic enough and he had the vision to go ahead and try to develop Tripura, which is a little state in the northeast of India. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Pragya. So the commemoration is happening the end of this week, right?
Yes. So I'll be leaving for, I'm right now in Shillong. I'll be going to Tripura. So I've been very busy.
Would be very nice to be there sometime. And you're so right. It's such a great shame that, the rest of us in so little about one whole region. We know only in like broad strokes. Thank you so much for presenting one side of it. The few people who are there today, for us, Tripura came alive. A little bit of its history came alive. The stories from the princely states, probably due to the way they've been told to us, there's always a little bit of intrigue. There's a little bit of sensationalism. And probably that, and there are many people have argued that it was indeed because the British chose to present the Maharajas as slightly eccentric characters that we have that impression. But when you presented it, we could see that there was real strategic reasons why there were intrigues, why there were conspiracies being hatched, etc. So we wouldn't have known about all of that had you not told us. Thank you so much. As with Anjali, you came in very late, and I know that you have a busy life. So thank you so much that you gave your time for this. We hope to see you more often. Thank you. And now for the last, but I think probably the most interesting session of the evening, I invite my friend Supriya from the Pune chapter. She will talk about a remarkable female presence. There were many women involved in the freedom struggle, but somehow, as with everything else in this world, we know more about the men who did it. But here was a remarkable woman. Supriya is going to tell us about Godutai. Go for it.
Thank you, Arun. Godavari Parulekar, remembering our women freedom fighters. Though lesser known and less celebrated, nearly half of the freedom movement was strengthened by women freedom fighters across India. Godavari Parulekar was one such freedom fighter who was born in Pune, Maharashtra. She was a dedicated social worker. She studied law and was thus the first woman law graduate in Maharashtra, becoming an inspiration for young women in this field. She devoted her life for the cause of the marginalized in the society, Adivasis, peasants, and workers' upliftment. Born in a well-to-do family, her father was a prominent lawyer, Lakshman Rao Gokhale, and she was a distant niece of the freedom fighter Gopal Krishna Gokhale. She left the comforts of her home to dedicate her life for the cause of freedom struggle. Godavari, or Godutai as she was fondly called, was actively involved in freedom struggle movement against the British rule right from her college days. She participated in individual satyagrahas for which she was convicted by the British regime in 1932. Godavari joined the Servants of India Society, founded by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Godavari was detained from 1940 to 42 for her opposition to British war efforts. With her communist and Marxist ideologies, she fought for the rights of the Adivasi communities in Maharashtra, both before and after independence. Godavari led the historic Warli Adivasi revolt during the 1945 to 1947 period against the oppression of landlords and moneylenders supported by the then ruling British. The Wali people were pushed into forced and bonded labor by the Sahukars who had taken over their lands by force. The revolt ended one of the worst forms of exploitation and also contributed to the national freedom struggle. She won the Sahitya Akademi Award for her book, Jevha Manus Jaga Hoto, The Awakening of Man in 1972. The book tells the story of the sorry state of the Adivasis in those times and outlines their struggle and efforts to awaken them and help them claim their due freedom. Godavari, along with her husband Shamrao Parulekar, also led the liberation struggle of Dadra and Nagar Haveli from the Portuguese in 1954. She is recipient of the Lokmanya Tilak Award for her service towards the underprivileged communities and the Savitribai Phule Award for her work towards social equality and emancipation of women. She dedicated her life for the true meaning of independence of our nation, encompassing the struggle for the freedom of the Adivasi communities. I feel the importance of these efforts lies not only in the freedom struggle of India as a nation against the colonial rule, but also in the struggle of freeing our fellow countrymen from the clutches of forced labor. Her life is an excellent example, a reminder of following the principles of our constitution, secularism and social justice, and helping our Indian brothers and sisters achieve their individual freedom. It's a reminder of responsibility of the privileged towards the less fortunate ones. We come across so many unfreedoms in various forms even today. even after 75 years, it helps us to contemplate on the true meaning of expression of freedom. To retrospect, even after 75 years, is my nation truly free? Or are fellow countrymen still struggling to understand what freedom means? Freedom is a continuous process, different for each generation. This struggle of a woman freedom fighter and all the other stories we heard today surely give us the inspiration and strength to become a voice against oppression and unravel the essence of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supriya. That was just the perfect way. I just saw Swapna texting, and I echo her thoughts. Just the best way to sort of wrap it up. And you do raise a very relevant point. Does the whole movement for freedom, the quest for freedom, does it end with August 15, 1947? So it obviously doesn't. Every day there are so many kinds of unfreedom, starting from our own personal worlds. And one of the biggest areas of freedom where one of the largest groups of people who still suffer great unfreedoms is one half of the population. You brought that out. You did it brilliantly, and what an inspirational figure. Thank you so much. And that was the last presentation of the evening. I'm going to request Sanusha to bring everybody, sort of unmute everybody so that everyone can see each other. I had a great time listening to the stories. Many of them were inspiring. Many of them were informative. The passion came through with almost all the people. Wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you to all my friends from within INTACH, all the people from the wider INTACH family and beyond who tuned in this evening, sat through what probably was not the most suave of presentations. We're all volunteers, but I think the passion showed through. Thank you so much to everybody. If anybody would like to say something, you can. Everybody's unmuted. So if anyone would like to say something, please go ahead. It'll become a little noisy, but that's also fun. But from me, that's it for the evening. Thank you.
Can we request Purnima ma'am to share some of her thoughts and suggestions, and also from the INTACH headquarters, if I know people are with us, so if we could hear them, and then we will ourselves speak, definitely.
Am I audible? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I think it was really wonderful. I'm really so glad, that you all took this initiative. It was a very brave attempt, Arun, Antara, and all of you all. And looking ahead, I think we would love to put these stories together. Each one of them is so different and so unique, and so beautifully shared by each one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As always, HECS have been so supportive, and all the 13 stories, I'm sure they have a character of their own. The presentations are 13 ways of presenting 13 different stories. Certainly, we would like to concretize them in a format. We'll think about it, definitely. Thank you. Can we have anybody else from the HECS or from the chapter division?
Yes, I think if I'm allowed to speak.
Definitely. Please, sir, please.
I think, as Arun initially said, I exist. So I think we all exist. And we all made a point today that howsoever far we may be from each other, I think most of us did not know each other, leave alone side probably see each other. Most of us didn't know each other by name, but how very wonderfully woven together by the team from Palakkad and the headquarters also. Arun, I think, did a wonderful job bringing us all together. And a humble submission from an area which is cut off from the mainland. We are 1,200 kilometers away from mainland India. That's what we call your part of India. We are cut off by the sea. I think such programs should be done more often, because unless we speak to each other, unless we get to know each other, unless we see each other, I don't think we can go the extra mile to do things which we can all do probably together. There's a lot of things that we can do together rather than doing alone. And it's just not one chapter of INTACH doing it separately. I think we can all probably join hands and do a lot of things together. Thank you, Arun. Thank you all.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure. We did it together. Nihal, Nihal, is that Nihal? You raised your hands. Would you like to say something?
Yes. Hello, hello everyone. I'm Nihal, and I'm from Darjeeling, but based in Delhi recently. And I got to know about INTACH just yesterday from Surabhi ma'am, because and I visited her place at Mussoorie Heritage Center, and it was really nice talking to her and seeing what she's trying to do in Mussoorie. And I also have a lot of interest, in kind of art, and also have an initiative in Darjeeling. So I thought our conversation was so aligned, and when she asked me to, kind of attend this event, it was like really nice of her. So I'd like to thank Surabhi ma'am and everyone for being very accommodating, and I really enjoyed this session, and yeah, looking forward to more, and also hearing from INTACH, and maybe slowly trying to work and do something with you all. So yeah, thank you.
Definitely, Nihal, we are a very open group. INTACH always is need of people who have interest, who have love, who have passion. Please explore, and thank you so much, Surabhi, for introducing Nihal. So, and there are many ways in which you can engage with INTACH. If you have a little bit of time, you can do. There are things to be done. If you have more time, there are bigger things to be done. So please let this not be the only way in which you connect with INTACH. Please walk into the nearest INTACH office. There's always need for people who can help. There are many things that have to be done. Thank you so much for attending. General Singh, you were about to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arun and Antara. I think it was a beautiful presentation, and as a matter of fact, all the speakers have really given the insight of their expertise or their areas. My only request is we must hold such kind of meetings every quarter, maybe in a rotation, or maybe you can take on, because I could see you from the last about 5-6 days since you spoke to me, quite busy on this issue. And it speaks a volume about you, and I'm sure we all have benefited. And I'm very, very sure if we continue such kind of a legacy, it is going to be a great for INTACH. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That's very generous. No one person can do anything, and in INTACH, we know that. There are many times when we try to do things on our own, we fail. So everything is done by many people. Some people have probably seen more or heard more, but as nobody knows more than this group of people, there is a lot of work that's done by a lot of people. They may not be visible or audible. So we brought it together, and we need to work together. We are a fantastic system. Some of the most gifted, the most sort of committed, the most knowledgeable people are INTACH members. And that is indeed the gold mine of what we represent. So I agree with you. We should find ways in which we connect the system and leverage the power of all this expertise and passion. I agree with you, sir. Anybody else, please?
Mr. Arun, I'm
Srinivas. Hi, Srinivas. We finally meet.
Hyderabad. I never had a chance to meet you, but we were on the phone for the last 1.5 years talking to each other. I congratulate you on this effort and all the speakers today. I just got a small suggestion for you. Instead of having 13 speakers, we can have 6 speakers every bi-monthly, so that we can have a personal interaction with Otherwise, we are just listening, and some of the doubts which we have, we are not unable to clear them. So my just thing is, once 2 months, 6 papers, we can have a better.
He's already suggested 2nd of October.
Definitely,
thank you,
Shiva,
Mr.
that is a legitimate critique. So we didn't have a plan. We just asked people we knew, then we took some suggestions from Purnima. So it was a very arbitrary way in which we did it, because whoever could sort of act in the few days we had. So, but the reason we did it is because it's a demonstration of how easy it is to pull such things together. We have this technology today. And the people I mentioned, the kind of people we have in the system. So many such conversations can happen. And these are magical technologies that they were truly magic. Like when I was in school, if you had said that, people sitting in the far corners could get together and see each other and talk, it would actually be called magic. And today we have magic free of cost. We don't even have to pay the ticket price for the magic show. So I agree with you. These should happen. Please, from Hyderabad, take the lead to organize it.
Yeah, we'll do that, definitely. Yeah.
Someone has already suggested 2nd of October. We can do something, with other states on the 2nd of October.
And
so many can happen. I had a very legitimate comment from a friend who was watching for a while, and this is a subject which always comes up in national INTACH conversations, which is the big language thing. Like, why on the day of independence, why are you having an event in English? Why not in Hindi? But then if he wouldn't say that if he heard my Hindi, he assumes that I can speak Hindi. But, we can have events where more people can engage because the language is one they're comfortable in. So there could be so many micro events. All of those are possible.
This bi-monthly meetings we can also have on themes every month, every bi-monthly one theme, so that we don't clash with other topics on the same day.
I agree. But everything that we do, I think the good thing is that Gurukyan Shukla, Purnima, etc., were applied that filter that these are INTACH events, and they should sort of reflect values. So, we should say things which are correct in value. That it should not be divisive. It should be accurate. All of those things, I think, those best practices we need to put in place, because ultimately these are events that are put out in the name of the organization. So as long as those things are put in place and we have some guidelines for doing that, it's sky's the limit.
So we had audiences from outside India when we were going through, and yes, there were participants who joined from Spain, from USA, and from UK. Wow. And right now we are having with us a professor in French who is teaching at University of Liverpool, and we are very proud to have him as our overseas member in INTACH Hooghly. And I have no qualms in admitting that had he not come down to Chandanagar in 2016, this INTACH chapter of Hooghly would not have formed. We were into a project, and INTACH Hooghly chapter came as an outcome of the project. So we have with us Dr. Yen Megadera joining from Britain, from Liverpool. And I would request Yen to unmute himself and to share his thoughts, because we have spoken a lot about British doing damage to India, and particularly getting to hear from somebody who is a British citizen, his thoughts. Yen, could you unmute yourself and speak for some time?
Unmuted. So it gives me a great pleasure just to say a few words from Liverpool, United.
Sorry, we cannot hear you. Your voice is breaking. So can you come a little bit closer so that we can...
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's better.
Thank you very, very much for such a wonderful session. I think everyone agrees. I'm speaking to you
Oh, it's still breaking. It's still breaking. Are you outside?
No, I'm not. I'm inside.
Okay, so I think it's the voice is not traveling. I don't know what's some problem. Can you rejoin so that we can hear you in a better way?
We can try, yes. Second.
We just wait a second for him to rejoin.
In the meanwhile, Vani, do you want to speak? You wanted to speak, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful evening.
Hello,
Especially
I wanted
on
to... Hi. I'll wait
Hi.
until I have my turn. Thanks.
Okay.
No, I think let him come in when he's audible.
Am I audible now?
Working, please speak.
Yeah.